Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme where, for the final week of the year, I just let my patrons pick whatever they want me to check out. Today we're going to be looking at a group called NEU. They're described as German krautrock pioneers. We're going to be looking at a 10-minute track from them called Hallogallo. Let's dive in and see what NEU has in store for us today. Coming up on the 20% mark. It's a rather minimal intro. I mean, one drum part, one chord, the muted percussive guitar work, and some light melodic ideas. Is there also... It's either inverted attack or the notes are reversed. Particularly on the instrument that pops up over here, the melodic one. Opening up the notes a little bit over here, more legato style. Same riff though. the bass and drums, and this guitar over here together give me the feeling of a road trip of sorts. It's just sort of this continuous movement without destination. Some new accents over here. So, given that we're almost out of time here, this is the track, huh? I'm really curious how they wrap this up. I think I gravitate towards the idea of a fade out. We sort of faded it in. This is a song with no destination. Fades out to give the illusion that it just continues going. We do have a little bit of increased energy though with the snare here. Oh, we've switched it back to the 2 and 4. It's interesting, none of that really felt like a rising energy, but this is certainly a return to something smaller. Yeah. A fade out's a good choice for this. For the reason that I brought up earlier, it's just, it alludes to the idea that this is infinite. Now, I got curious, because this is a very specific sound, almost a hyper minimal version of post rock. Almost a compressing down of that too, where post rock likes to start with something small and build to these grandiose finales. The gap between the lowest and highest point of this track is relatively smaller. Like I mentioned, I didn't even notice we reached a peak until we removed all of this layering and we simplified it back down to what we had at the start of the track. It's such a small movement. It's layering by such minuscule components. Instead of going from a 2 to a 10, this is more like going from a 5 to a 6, but there's still movement there. And coming down from that 6 to the 5 is something that you can feel, even though it took us a solid 8 minutes to get up to that 6. We went, most of the time when I say, we're moving from a 5 to a 6, that's a one-step jump. But here we're moving from 5 to 5.1 to 5.2 to 5.3, and it's more minuscule steps. It's interesting because it feels like a stripped down version, a minimal version of a slow burn. I find that to be really interesting in concept. I don't think I was as engaged with it listening to it. The execution of it, it's not my cup of tea. But it is interesting to think about it from that perspective. Instead of having the grand journey across multiple continents, this is a journey from one town to another. Still can be interesting. It can still have peaks and valleys. They're just not going to be as on grand of a scale. But I went to check out some info about this, at least the little bit I could get from Spotify. And it came out in 1972. This is the opening track of the album and is far and away the longest one as well. After this, there's a 5-minute, a 6.5, a 7, almost a 10, so that catches up a little bit, and then back down to a 7. And none of these tracks have broken 1 million plays, whereas Hallogallo is almost at 10 million plays. This is by and far an outlier, both in length and in popularity. It makes me wonder what the rest of the album is. Is the next track that barely even gets to 5 minutes in length also a slow burn, repetitive driving track? Or do they do something else? Is it shorter because they're focusing on more of a mainstream sound there? I wager that track 5's almost 10-minute song probably is close to what they're doing here, but how do they adapt this idea of a smaller gap slow burn in just 5 minutes? Is it going to feel the same? I can't imagine it will. That's just some of the stuff that I was thinking about while listening to this track. Getting into specifics here, there is a general foundation to this song. It's the bass and the drums in the center, giving us our steady driving momentum. It keeps the song pushing forward, but that's about it. There isn't a brisk pace to it. There's very little variation to that. We'll get a drum fill every now and then, and towards the end of the track, we begin to have more snare attacks, not just on 2 and 4, but something that feels a bit more energetic and even kind of overbearing a little bit. We get a lot of snare at the end, and I think it's more of keeping the focus within this track, because compared to other bands, sure, that wasn't a very overbearing snare idea. But within this song, it certainly is. We went from 2 attacks per bar upwards to 6 or 7. We also have this guitar over on the left giving us our single chord. Shaping around it, we get 3 notes primarily, kind of bouncing between them. Maybe it's only 2 notes. No, there's 3 notes because we get a third pitch at the end of the line. Most of it's just bouncing back and forth between 2 pitches, though. This gives us our harmonic information. It is a single chord. The bass, I didn't mention this at the beginning of the track, follows the pattern rhythmically of the drums, but is pretty much just a single pedal tone. If the chords aren't moving, the single note that the bass plays doesn't move either. We could have had a walking bass line, but I think that would have implied something different. This is about, because of these 3 instruments and their singularity of vision, to me this is about, like I mentioned, sort of a drive down a highway. It's a long drive. Maybe you're looking at a 30, 50 minute, maybe even a 70-minute drive. And most of it is just going to be going straight. There is a cyclicality, a repetition to all of this, but it isn't completely looped. You might see different billboards or different cars, or maybe the lanes will come down a little bit. Maybe they'll expand again. You're not really going to be doing much, not like city driving where you might have to take lefts and rights and stop at stop signs or lights or whatever. This is more singular than that, but it isn't completely static. And I think that's where the rest of these ideas come from. Because aside from these static ideas, there is the ornamental ones. We have two instruments on the side. Sometimes they're guitars, sometimes they might be guitars, but to my ears are synthesizers. And they partake in drone, they partake in melody or melodic ideas, usually just, a couple of notes, doodle-doo, just like a nice little run here and there. Sometimes it'll hold a drone out, and instead of just tapering off, it'll have 3 notes or so at the end to wrap up the idea. They are continuously evolving. Never the same idea twice. In my feeling of this track, it almost began to transform into a jam session where the foundation never changed and what sat above that had free reign to do whatever they wanted. Maybe this is all pre-composed. Maybe they made it up every time they played it live. I don't know, but there is very little in the way of pattern as far as what these two instruments are doing here. And they continue to evolve as well, starting off at the beginning of the track more sparse, showing up for a couple of beats and then disappearing for several bars at a time. By the end of the song, though, they are consistently popping up with new ideas. There's also the evolution of this rhythmic percussive guitar over here, mostly palm muted, chunking of the strings and creating a rhythmic cadence out of that, usually pairing well with the drums, but also sometimes doing its own thing. We also see over here on the left, this guitar that gives us our chord information. Changes up what it's doing as well. Sometimes moving from a more staccato to a legato style, sometimes introducing some extra notes. We did get a 4th note in there at one time where it almost felt like bouncing between 2 different chords rather than just one. Playing 3 notes one time and then the next bar playing the same first 2 but a different 3rd. Makes it feel like there's a little bit of movement there. That happened only for a short time and we returned back to just the original 3 notes, the original chord. But there is little manipulation, little movement going on around all this that supports the continued evolution and growth of the ideas on top of that. And of course, I talked about the drummer expanding their ideas towards the end of the track as well. There is this constant growth towards loudness, towards denser layers, a heightened tension that I didn't even notice was there until once again it all dissipated and we reached a calm. I didn't even know I needed that calm, but we were certainly at a tension peak. It's really interesting how that snuck up on me. I really do think it's the gradual buildup over time across such a short gap. It's much easier to feel rising action when you're moving from that 2 to a 10, rather than just moving one step up and getting all these micro steps along the way. But there's something else about these instruments on the side that kind of throw me off, and it's their timbre, it's the sound. So much of it feels backwards. And this can happen 2 ways. I never really got a read on how they were approaching this, but the 2 ways I've heard that give me this similar sound is to either reverse the idea entirely. I don't know how possible that would have been in 1972, but nowadays you just record it and then you right click it and hit reverse and now you get the opposite. And it's going to reverse everything. And one of the things that gets reversed is attack. The thing is that the way that you end a note is different than the way you start a note, whether it is an air instrument, whether it's a string instrument, whether you're picking or bowing. There's different textures to beginning notes and ending notes. And so if you're going to play the note backwards, it's going to start with the ending texture and it's going to end with the beginning texture. And that feels weird. It's kind of like when you hear people speak backwards. And then you hear people try to speak backwards in a way that when you reverse it, will have it being played forward, but it still sounds weird too. We have ways of inflection of beginnings and endings, and they don't work well when they're flipped. And so we can also do that too. Without changing the order of the notes, without reversing the entire thing, we can just alter the way that attacks and releases are handled. And one thing I got from here quite frequently was that we never really had a start that felt right. Many of the notes felt like we faded into them, a very rapid fade in. And nowadays, we actually had a huge era of pop music around the beginning, maybe the middle of the 2010s, moving into the 2020s. A huge thing where the attack of the note was diminished, almost zero volume, and then it rapidly rose. So you get wah, 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 rather than bop, 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 bop. And it kind of builds into every note, and it comes in just after the downbeat. And I got some of that here too. So I don't know if we're reversing everything or we're just altering how notes are beginning and ending. Regardless, some of this sounds like the song is moving in reverse, despite the foundation very clearly having forward momentum. And it's this cross movement to it. To me, it informs so much of the feeling of the track. If they had just played traditional melodic ideas or ornamental ideas with traditional guitar tones on top of this, I don't think it would have grabbed my attention as much, but it's the texture, the timbre, the effects they put on these instruments that it gives it a unique feeling. It gives it a story that isn't just a jam session. I appreciate that. I don't know if that was accidental or maybe that was something they planned from the start. I mean, it's kind of tough to know with art. Art is weird. Sometimes you luck into things and sometimes you know them intrinsically, and other times you had no intention for a reading, but it works so well that something must have been guiding your hand while you were writing or performing this. Some sort of muse or fate or whatever you might want to think about when it comes to art. Regardless, this decision, it is the magic for the track. Like I said, without it, I think it would end up being a much lesser song. Now, there are no lyrics to this. I think we're just going to wrap this up. A quick note, I did try to translate Hallogallo, and as one word, it doesn't seem to be anything, but if I put a space between them, it translates to hello rooster from German. I don't know if that's what they were going for, just kind of smash those words together to make a cool composite word here. But I don't have any way to relate rooster to this track. So I might just be really off on what they were going for with that title. These are my thoughts on NEU's Hallogallo. Let me know what you thought of this. Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this? Let me know. Put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.